Unheard, straight up.
Hello, thank you for tuning in to another wonderful episode with your host Savannah. Watch this get tucked out. Oh my God, with your host Savannah with Lupus Has No Face podcast with our wonderful guest Serita. Okay, we'll be talking about what to do when the doctors cannot help you. Oh my God, why does it have brain fog like that?
It's part of everything going on.
Oh,
and I think
my
too,
God.
because what we were just talking about as well probably threw you in a whole completely other direction of what I was saying to you. So
I
that might
just
be the
went
other part.
blank. Oh my God. Okay. We will be discussing what to do when the doctors cannot help you. Okay. Before we get into all of these things, right? Who is the Miss Lovely Serita? Who is she?
Multiple things. Hey, everybody. Blessings, everyone. I know you probably are familiar with the voice this with the moistest. No, that didn't sound good, did it? We both are just a mess today. That's really, for
True and transparent.
where you going, Tom? I couldn't help. We gotta break the ice some way.
Right. We gotta break the ice. Can't always be serious, right?
Hey everybody. So Serita Valmond, aka I'm chronically resilient, holistic chronic pain coach and wellness consultant. Also voice of That's What Serita Said on WJMR Jam at 98.3. And I am also a chronic pain warrior.
Yes.
I'm a fibro warrior, advocate for all things blackity black,
Yes.
but then also all things that are affecting the community as well too. And I'm really just, number one, happy to be here, of course, with you and proud of you for everything that you're doing and the advocacy that you're doing as well, because it's something that I feel like, unfortunately, when it's something that has to deal with people of color, we go unnoticed. And that's actually part of why some of these things are actually happening to us. And I don't want to go too deep too quick, but nonetheless, I want to just, give you your flowers, while I'm here.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me, but I could not do it without you guys as well. So I appreciate you for helping me make noise in the community, in the nation. So I appreciate you as well.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
So that brings us here today as far as the chronic illness and the fibromyalgia and the holistic thing, right? And us not making enough noise in the community. So just to kind of like turn the corners a little bit, why do you think there's not enough noise being made when it comes to, I don't want to make it a black thing, but let's just be very transparent when it comes to colored people? Why is there not enough light being shined on things that's dealing with black individuals when it comes to invisible illnesses?
It is the systems that are in place right now, the systems that actually got us to where we are currently. And so now that we are trying to get out of those systems, that's where it's like, oh, they're paying attention. Oh, they're up and they're awake. They're woken now. And it's like also now too, noticing it's been affecting more people that are not melanated as well. And once you notice that turn also happens, then you also start to see more of the advocacy on that side too. So that's another piece to kind of, just to watch, watch out for when that starts to happen as well. But I think now that we are more or less not trusting these systems anymore because we're seeing how it has affected us. I mean, we're going back 400 years as far as for how we've even been experimented on. And so when you are the person that's basically, the guinea pig, for a better lack of terms,
Yeah.
you start to look for other ways to do things. And now that we're seeing it, now we're seeing people in the community healing themselves, myself included,
For sure.
being able to go ahead and see that and see like, okay, these are walking medical miracles, but no, are they? Is it that they were able to finally figure out what it was that works for them? Because the thing is that it's not a one size fits all solution. And that's also the way that it's been treated from the beginning. So that's just a little bit.
So let's speak on some of these systems. As far as what systems are you speaking of for the people that do not know?
No, absolutely. I mean, we can go back to redlining. We can go back to like the DEI. I mean, we can go back to so many different things that have happened. I mean, even going back to not being able to vote, not being considered a person. All these different things that you're kind of, that have been compounded over the years. And then it also crosses through generations as well, too. And so when you're looking at all those different aspects, it's a lot. And it gets, even though, for lack of better, it gets heavy real quick. But the good news, though, is that there are things that we can do.
It definitely is things that we can do. Just for instance, right? Mm-hmm. We can make noise, right? We choose not to.
Right.
I feel like when things are in place and for us to make a change, one day, if we stop doing something, we can make a statement. We can make noise to turn around for the better of us. But we don't because of the lack of knowledge, the lack of education, the I don't care, and the foolery and things of that nature, when it's really just bigger than us. We got generations after us, our kids, all of that. And people don't think about that. And that's what I call ignorance, right? And then you just to fast forward to what happened with Curry, Stephen and his mom, right? And how he handled the situation.
Right.
He put a whole system into place.
Yeah.
A whole system. And our culture is so many of us, and we're so strong and we're so intelligent and we're so smart, but we never come together collectively as one because everybody want credit for something. Everybody want to say I did it.
It's a lot of ego.
It's a lot of ego that comes into place, and as to why we never get anything done. It's never a movement for real, and it's slow if we do make a movement.
And that's sad. And that's definitely the hard truth, unfortunately. And that's why it's like, once again, the things that we're doing as far as we're bringing light to what is going on, what is happening. Because these things are not, the things that have happened to me. I mean, this is within still the past 7 years. This is not like, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. This is like still in the current decade that, we're in, that these things have occurred. And so being able to really go ahead and look at things, like you said, once again, being able to say, hey, okay, now we're noticing this trend going on. The other aspect, though, that I'm probably thinking fast as I'm saying this, but us not actually verbalizing what is going on with our bodies as well, too. Because oftentimes we have that tendency of being like, hey, you know what? I'm a strong person. I can go ahead. I can handle this. And it's like, well, yes, you are. But you should not be handling this. Absolutely. This is not something this is not normal. Like your body is really trying to tell you something, but something in your life, unfortunately, you're ignoring and you're not paying attention to, and your body's trying to tell you that there's something wrong. And unfortunately, when you have that split like that, that's another thing that then we kind of have to try to bring you back together. And then once we're able to go ahead and, so to speak, bring you back together, back to yourself, then be like, okay, now let's go ahead and see how we can make a difference and be able to come together with others and kind of, have those conversations and say, hey, this is really what happened.
So let's talk about that, because that's why we're here today, right? And that's what got you into the holistic part, right? So what happened to you as to why you got into the holistic?
Let's see here. How much time we got? No, I'm sorry. Well, it's the thing. It's like a combination of life, but then also other things kind of being brought to the forefront for me. So what ended up happening is that I was in a bad car accident. I was rear-ended by a drunk driver at a stoplight. I was in the area where the speed limit was 25. She was going at least 60. Yeah. So from there, I was a science experiment for close to 2 years, going to all these different doctors and specialists, and no one could help me, but they could give me a pill. And so in the middle of my journey, I was on about roughly like 7 or 8 medications. And I finally got the opportunity to see an orthopedic surgeon after about roughly a 6-month wait. So when I get in to see him, he looks at me and he's like, okay, he's like, I see that they're, run all these different tests, but have they checked this? And I just started to laugh because I was like, you know what? If you want to run another test, I'm like, you know what? It is what it is.
Right.
If you find something great, if you don't, you won't be the first person.
Right.
And I did another MRI and a CT and discovered that I had bone chip spurs going into my nerve in my right shoulder. I'm right-handed. And the type of pain that I was having was basically, like when your foot falls asleep, you have that pins and needle feeling. Well, imagine feeling like that all over your body and also feeling like you're on fire at the same time. That's how I was just constantly feeling. So I would usually, my pain was around like a 7 or 8 on a daily basis. But then if I would go into a flare, then, that goes, past that. And then you can't even, count where you're at that point. And so he said to me, he's like, you know what, we need to go ahead and do surgery right away, which turned out to be a 4-month wait. And in the interim of that, I still was pretty much going back and forth with that pain. And so taking those, kind of trying to mask things with the different medications. And during that time frame, unfortunately, my mother fell ill. And it was basically, unexpectedly. And then it was about roughly a month before my scheduled surgery that this occurred. And I went down to, check and see what's going on. And unfortunately, I lost my mother.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And so that was about roughly, 7 years ago now that occurred. And then from there, I had to, unfortunately, because I'm an only child, I had to plan everything because my father had shut down, just mentally, physically, everything. Because the week prior to my mother's transition was my parents' 55th wedding anniversary. And so they didn't get an opportunity, of course, to celebrate that or anything. They're actually supposed to when she had fallen ill. So I had to take over. And of course, I'm also at a 9 or 10 on the pain scale at the time as well, doing all of this and still, functioning. People were thinking that I was okay. And I'm like, I was just numb at that point, just because of, when you're in pain for so long, your brain just kind of blocks it out. And you're just like, you're just functioning until one time you might be like, oh, that's a little different. But then you kind of, but then you might be like, then you keep, kind of going. And which is, of course, not what you should be doing, by the way. But I end up coming back up here. And then I had the surgery. And of course, I'm giving y'all the short version. Then I had the surgery. And after I had the surgery, I ended up losing the motor functions in my right hand. So now I have to relearn how to write, brush my teeth, comb my hair, basically everything you take for granted. And then I'm still in pain. Now, my pain dropped down to about a 5 or 6 on the pain scale, but I felt that was unacceptable. I'm like, if you're doing surgery, we're doing all these things, something has to give.
Right.
And so they said, well, you have 2 options. We can either, do surgery again, or we can put you in a pain management protocol. I told them, you had one time to touch me. You are never touching me again. I will just go on the pain management protocol. And so then from there, once I went to pain management protocol, for me, it was more or less like a fancy way of saying, like, here's your next set of pills.
Yeah.
Because at that point, I was on 15 medications, upwards of 30 pills a day. I then started to rapidly decline to the point where I was bedridden. And I went to a specialist that told me to get my power of attorney paperwork together. My son that had just turned 18 was a senior in high school, getting ready to go to college to play football, was now supposed to take care of me and my 2 younger kids as well, which they were in elementary school at that time. So they completely wrote me off and just said, this is it. This is what your life is going to be like. I was in my mid-30s at that time. I also had just gotten divorced the year prior. So I'm like, oh, hell no, this is not what's about to happen. I'm like, I'm just finally like getting, finally kind of getting back to me and like who I want to strive to be. And you're telling me that this is what my life is going to be like. So when that occurred, the next day, my son went to school. He had his own car, so didn't have to worry about that. I dropped my younger 2 kids off and I came home and I cried, I prayed, I meditated. I asked for a sign because I did not want to be here anymore. I had already made that decision that might have to be an option at that point. And while that was happening, all of a sudden my phone dings. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm like, that's just a message. But then it stopped me because I was like, well, wait a minute. Why haven't you researched the different things you've been diagnosed with to see if there's any other alternatives available? Because somebody has to be living at least 1% better than what you are. And at that point, if I could just get out the bed and stay out the bed for a little bit longer, I was okay with that. And that's what really started me on my journey where I decided at that point, I was diagnosed with 5 things. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, myofascial pain syndrome, degenerative disc disease in my neck, chronic migraines, and nerve damage. So in essence, all those pills were basically just to mask the symptoms that were coming from all those different things, which then at that time is probably, another symptom happening from a pill, but we'll get to that later. But, but just basically seeing like all the things that were happening. And so I decided I'm going to dive into fibro. I'm going to see what's going on with this, see what I can do. And I really just started to change things from there. And so I, went through my nutrition, my stress management, because I had none. I didn't know what that was. Black person in America, just a Black woman in America. Didn't know what any of that was. Then I also dived in on trauma healing because I had a lot of different things that had happened to me during my life. And I just compartmentalized everything. I just be like, okay, let's put it in this little box, throw it over the shoulder, and we'll deal with that another day. And my body was holding on to every single thing that happened.
And that needed to come out.
It needed to come out. And that accident, and that's why I kind of said there's been a lot of things kind of brought me to, to the spot. But I think with the accident, what it was really, the Most High was like, okay, she not listening to this, center this. We need to sit her down. Because if we don't sit her down, she is not going to make it for her purpose and the things that she's supposed to be doing. We got to sit you down. And that really, during that time frame, I was sat down. I was in my bed. Google was my best friend, Google and Amazon. I was having books coming and whatever I was researching. I was like, okay, let me get another book for that. Let me get a book for this. And I was just, educating myself because I'm like, at this point, I'm like, I'm now my doctor. Because I can't, unfortunately trust the physicians that I'm going to. And I had, 3 doctors I had to fire, during my journey, where I had one doctor I went in to see. And I was actually happy so normally, I'm not normally happy to see my doctor. But at this point, I was actually happy because at that moment, I was actually in a flare. And I said, oh, good, I'm in a flare. They can actually test me. They can see what's going on because normally when I'm in here, I'm not, or I'm just out of one. So I'm not, in that space.
Yeah.
So took me maybe about 2 hours to get ready for this 10-minute appointment. So I go in there and I'm, talking to the doctor. And I'm like, yes, I said, I'm currently in a flare right now. And he's like, he's writing down. He looks up at me. He's like, no, you're not. I said, excuse me. He was like, you're not in pain right now. I said, yes, I am. I said, I'm having a pain flare. I said, this is actually one of the worst ones I've had in quite some time. I said, how are you telling me that I'm not, in pain? He was like, well, you look too put together.
Oh, baby.
I didn't have any makeup on or anything. Like I was just bare faced, but still like, but showered, of course, had on fresh, clean clothes because that's how I was raised, but also just a cultural competency. That if you know about people of color in my age range, that we were taught that even regardless of what's going on, I don't know if anybody's grannies used to be like, make sure you got on clean drawers because you don't know if you have an accident. Things like that. It's like, that's how I was raised. And so I'm like, regardless, and like I said, it literally took me like an hour to take a shower because I was in so much pain. I had to stop and sit down and then get back up again. And so I'm like, okay. And I said to him, I said, it took me 2 hours to get ready for this. And you're telling me that I'm not in pain. And he was like, I don't see, he's like, there's nothing really. I said, you know what? I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna help you out. And I'm just gonna leave.
That is just so crazy how they can just try to look at you and tell you that you're not in pain.
Yeah, but I had another one too that said to me, was in my head, that there's no way that I can be in that much pain, because if I was, I should be I should get admitted. And I said, what is gonna happen when I'm admitted different than what's happening right now? He couldn't answer that question. And so I got up and I walked away. The last one, though, was the funniest one. And I say that very sarcastically because I have, like I mentioned, I have 3 kids. And my middle one, I had natural childbirth and was up walking around within like 10 to 15 minutes, which I don't recommend.
You're a beast.
I don't recommend it at all. Was not supposed to go down that way. It was a complete, that definitely was not on my bingo card for any of that to happen the way that it did. But he, of course, looked at my file and he said, oh, I see that you had your middle child natural childbirth and you're up walking around within 10 to 15 minutes. I don't understand how you can be in so much pain right now. And I looked at him and I said, okay, first of all, you're a man. Therefore, you don't know what it feels like to have a menstrual cramp, let alone give birth to a child.
Absolutely.
Also, number 2, I said, you're comparing apples to oranges. When you go through childbirth, that pain ends. This, I don't know when it's going to end. It's continuous. It's not stopping. I said, it may stop for a moment and then all of a sudden it might calm down a little bit and then it comes back up again. I said, that's not how childbirth works. So I see that you're not able to help me. And I got up and I walked away. And that's when I was like, you know what? I am on my own. And from all of the different doctors and specialists that I saw, the only person of color I finally saw that was a specialist was at the very end when I said, I'm done with y'all. And that was her first week there in that pain management clinic. And I said, I'm so sorry that this is your first week here. I said, but this is also probably going to be the last time you're seeing me. I said, because if you can look at my file, you can see how long I've been dealing with you guys and everything is getting worse as I'm here. I'm not coming back. I'm discharging myself because this is not working for me.
Listening to you, that is just so sad. Like, how can people just sit there and look at you and just be like, oh, you're not in any pain?
Right.
And you went to school all of these years and you want to eyeball me and say, oh, you're not in any pain. You don't want to hook me up to no nerve monitor or any shock monitors and none of that. And
not
just
even checking my pulse in some instances where I'm like, and the
or
thing
blood pressure or anything.
And that was the crazy part too, because I've come from a line of nurses. Like my mother was a nurse, my grandmother, her mother was a nurse. So like that's the whole. So I'm very familiar with the medical system, and it's like I know what you're supposed to be doing. So the fact that I'm asking you why you're not doing the things that you're supposed to be doing is very alarming. Because it's like, this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to document. If you're saying you're not going to do this test for me, then you have to document that because you're denying me care. So looking at all those different things.
I'm so sorry that happened to you. That is crazy. Did you even bother to do like a lawsuit?
At the time, no, because I was also still grieving my mom. So it was just so much that was on me at that time that I didn't even think about it. Also, too, I happened to have been at that time in a very bad relationship that turned into a DV. And so I had so much going on that was unfortunately not on the forefront of my mind. And I didn't really have anyone around me that could be like, hey, Serita, you probably should be, getting this together, or you should be looking at this way. And of course, at this point, and I'm statute of limitations. Like, I don't know.
Is there a statute of limitations on that?
And I don't know, because it's like I've honestly never.
Because you have everything documented. It would be worth looking into if you even wanted to deal with that, because that's crazy.
But then also too, I see on the same, on the other side of things though, as well, is that the things that I'm doing, And I feel like now, because I don't mention the hospital system or anything like that, it's a very prominent one here, and that's all I'm going to say. But the thing is that, I do that for a reason, because I also know that eventually the tables are going to turn. You're going to actually need the things that I'm doing because of the fact that you guys are lacking this in your space. So feel free. You can definitely reach out to me.
So going through all of that, you started your holistic journey. So what was the first thing that you did to get you going?
I looked at what I could control. So one thing is, of course, what I'm putting in my body. What am I eating?
So you started with food.
So I definitely started with nutrition and looking at that and saying, okay, what is the best type of, lifestyle I should live when it comes to my food. And so I decided to go with the anti-inflammatory lifestyle, which with that is it's dairy free, gluten free, and then it's mostly like plant based. It also is still chicken. Still like this thing, sometimes people are like, oh, I can't miss my chicken. There's, you're still able to go ahead and have some of those things. I don't do red meat, just because that's something that can cause inflammation in the body.
Yep.
I also try to, watch my alcohol intake, as well. So I might, have a drink every now and again, but then if I do, I got to follow behind with like a couple bottles of water in too, just to be able to go ahead and offset the dehydration. And so, knowing that, for my body,
that comes with knowing your triggers, right?
Absolutely. So you got to be able to go ahead and know, for yourself and for how your body is functioning and everything too. The dairy was a hard one. Just because we're in Wisconsin, that's all. That's all that seems to be around us. But then I had to start finding, basically the alternatives. And I noticed once I did, I definitely could feel the difference in my body, because I did have a lot of inflammation that was going on, from being on all the medications, on top of the fact that I wasn't able to move my body like I should have been able to. I mean, I was doing physical therapy, but that was pretty much, the gist of it. And then when things got so bad, I could barely even get out the bed to even walk. So then I had to actually, relearn how to get myself, the stamina to even be able to go ahead and do walks and things like that too.
So which one of those actually put you down, or was it a combination of all?
I would say it was a combination of all. I would say it just was everything overall.
So what got you back up and moving?
I would say the nutrition was the biggest piece, because then I was able to finally be like, okay, I can actually feel my body. So now that I can actually feel my body, it doesn't feel as heavy. It doesn't feel as like, like I'm just, like just thrown back from the fatigue and everything. I'm like, now, okay, let me go ahead and start trying to move now. And so I started with just like slowly walking around the house, like being able to walk around the couch. If I could go down the stairs a little bit, it was really just like literal baby steps, as far as we're doing that, get outside, be able to go ahead and go to the drive, the bottom of the driveway back to the house, and then start to go to down the block and so on. And so that's how I was able to go ahead and start that. And then I started doing like resistance bands, because I noticed that I lost a lot of muscle, because prior to my accident, I actually was working out 6 days a week. I was very, very fit. I was working out with Truman McGee was my trainer at the time. So he was, getting tired fitness. So he was my trainer and everything. And me and him, that's my dog, so
he's been around for a very long time.
Yes, he has. And so, that was something that, I was like, okay, I really want to get back to that, because I enjoyed, working out and doing that. And so I, got back into, working out again, hired a trainer eventually, because I felt like I was just at a point where I did enough that I could do at the house. And I want to know again, because of because I technically have like a new body now, because I have to relearn like how to use my shoulder and everything again. So I really want to work with someone that could help me to do that. And so I, went that route. But then when it came to the trauma healing, one good thing from the pain clinic, so I don't want to down them completely, but I did have a pain psychologist that I was working with. And so when I was working with her, she actually reintroduced me to meditation. And what was interesting was that I actually was a meditator up until that point. But once I had my accident, I kind of just like, you get knocked off of your whole, your whole routine. So I had stopped doing it. And so she was like, no, that's actually something good that you want to go ahead and try to reincorporate. Well, I was like, well, I don't know how to do it now, because it's like literally like I just couldn't, I was still in a lot of pain and everything. So I was like, I couldn't understand how to do it. So she kind of was like, well, let me show you how to meditate now that, as far as for being able to pay more attention to your body and not be so stiff and so, rigid and everything. And then she taught me how to do that.
So what do that look like?
It looks like it's basically called I want to say it's not muscle progression, but it's muscle regression. And forgive me if I'm saying it incorrectly. I know what it is, but I can't. It's like I know what to do, but in essence, you will tense up. It's almost like a body scan meditation. When you're doing a body scan, you're going from like you can either go from your feet up or your head down. It's whatever your preference is.
So are you sitting down?
Yes.
Okay.
You are sitting. You can be sitting down or you can be laying down.
Okay.
So whichever one works for you best. But in essence, what you're doing is you're tensing that particular part of the body and then you're releasing.
Okay.
So that way, then you can kind of pay attention, like, oh, that's what my body's supposed to feel like when you're feeling the release portion of it. Because then it's like that because in that moment, you're not feeling the pain.
So is your eyes closed?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's one of those things too. It's still like if you want to keep your eyes open, you could. If you're kind of like, okay, I'm new to this, let me try to, let me just kind of see how it goes. But then from there to really kind of get the best out of it, I would say to just have your eyes closed, just because that way then you're more or less focused on what you're doing. But you can even start up by like tensing up your shoulders, for example, and then bring them back down. And then you can be like, okay, I just want to only tense up my hands and, or tense on my, and just really just go for each part of your body all the way down to your feet. And then once you do that, that's something that then is allowing to kind of release some of that pressure in your body.
And it's called meditating.
That's one form of meditation. It's called a body scan meditation. So there's like multiple forms of meditation. And I think sometimes people get kind of shy away from it because they think that when they hear the word meditation, they automatically think, okay, I have to like stop thinking, like my brain has to stop and I can't stop my thoughts and all that.
That's what I used to think.
And it's like, that's not what it is.
No, that's what I used to think.
Not at all. It's just being able to basically to slow down and then it's able to slow down your thoughts. And you don't have to necessarily pay attention to the thoughts. You can kind of, like I say, put a little pin in it for later. You put it in the parking lot or you might put it in the cloud or let the cloud float by, whatever it is that helps you to be able to go ahead and just to kind of like calm yourself down. And then you can include the breathing. And like some good ones that you can do is like, for example, a 5-5-7 breath. That's something that helps with your nervous system. It actually helps to calm your nervous system down. And a lot of times when it comes to pain, that's part of that has to come partially from your nervous system being dysregulated. And so it's helping you to actually get your nervous system regulated again. And so when you do like a 5-5-7, in essence, what you're doing is you're inhaling for 5 seconds, you're holding your breath for 5 seconds, and then you're releasing it for 7. And when you're releasing it, you can just be, just blowing, out your mouth. You don't have to be all, aggressive with it if you don't want to. But I mean, if it's something that you're really like you're mad and you just want to get it out, that's fine. You can blow it out, harder. But if you do that at least like 10 times, for example, that can actually get your body calm enough to be able to kind of move forward for the rest of the day. And I think sometimes with something being we might consider so minute, can do something so big, for your day. That's why I often say to people, give yourself 5 minutes. That's even like that gives you enough time to do some breath work and to, and
so you gotta be willing to put in the work.
Right. You have to be able to go ahead and take that time, for yourself. And I know sometimes we might be so used to doing things for others that we don't take that opportunity to take that time for ourselves, but you have to, because it's one of those things. I don't even want to go into like, the proverbial, you can't pour from an empty cup, but even it's like the thing is that you can't pour from anything. It's not even a cup. It's like, I want to work off the overflow. I want my cup to, continuously runneth over. Then that way I can go ahead and help out more. I can't, necessarily do, as best as I can, not taking care of myself. So it's like being able to go ahead and rest, being able to go ahead and take care of the vessel, because the vessel is what's going to be able to help you in your purpose.
For sure. How long did it take you, like when you were down, how long did it take you when you started your holistic journey to start like seeing progression?
So once again, this is not a regular normal situation, but for me, I really was just at the point where I'm an all or nothing person when it comes to things like this, for like when it comes to my health. So it's like, okay, I have to do this. So it actually took me 4 months. And I know that sounds wild,
so dedicated,
but I was completely dedicated. Like I had my kids, were even like looking, because I told them, I said, don't bring this mess in my house. I said, if you want to eat whatever, like my son would be in his car eating because he'd be like, I want some McDonald's. I said, well, you got McDonald's money. You go ahead because you working. You go do what you need to do. I said, but I don't want that in my house. I said, you see what's in this fridge. That's not coming in here. So I'm not condoning what you're eating. I said, I'm not putting you down either. I said, because you're wherever you need to be at in your journey at the time. I said, but I said, for me to respect me, please don't bring it in, because I said, this is bigger than this. I said, if you want me to be here for you and for your, for your siblings, I got to do this. And he's like, okay, Ma. He's like, say less, I'm not going to, do any of that. And then he did. He was, but it would be funny because one time I was like, is you really in the car? You know what? Like, you could have just stayed in the parking lot there and just ate it. Like, why'd you even drive home?
He had to eat something. He had to eat something. He was like, mine. He had to eat something. He was like, shoot, I want some salt.
Right, I'm like, hey. So,
oh my God. Okay. What were the initial health concerns that? Well, no, we talked about that already. Which holistic treatments have you tried, and what promoted you to choose them?
Okay. I would say from like the research aspect of it, like I definitely was looking at different herbs, however you want to say. So I'm West Indian, so if my accent comes out in different times, so whatever, herbs that I was able to go ahead and kind of research, like for example, like turmeric is a big one. Curcumin, which comes from turmeric as well too, where if you put a black pepper, that also activates it, so that way it can go ahead and help the inflammation in the body. Also can help with some blood pressure, can help with your skin health and things like that as well too. Let me see what else. Sarsaparilla as well too. That's something that can go ahead and kind of helps as far as you're balancing out hormones for your body, and also helps with iron, because I noticed for myself that my iron had always been low, but it was super like apparent, when I was going through this. Also like getting my panels and things done, and being able to go ahead and kind of see where things were at. So like I noticed that like my vitamin D was also very low, because we're in Wisconsin. We're not out in the sun like we're supposed to be. And so therefore that's something that's definitely a hard thing for, a person of color, so it's always something like those are a couple things that kind of just look at off the bat just to see, and then kind of go from there when it comes to supplementation. So that was one big piece, because I noticed that even with regardless of how much I was eating, because I was definitely like, okay, I got to be doing this and this and this, I still wasn't getting enough, as far as for like I said, for iron and things of that nature. So that part definitely helped me.
Okay. So what did you have to do to make sure you had enough iron?
Actually, it just was from the actual iron pills that I started to take.
So
I did take an iron supplement.
Okay.
And so that's something, and the ones that I take are not hard to the stomach, because that was something else too that I used to try to take different ones, and I used to get sick from iron pills. And so I got to a point that I had stopped taking them. And then, of course, now with the, technology, things have definitely changed with how, the pills were back then versus, now. So then I'm like, okay, I can do this, because a lot of the ones that I use are actually, they're all plant-based ones, but it actually just like, just a little, the little dose that goes into the actual pills themselves. And I'm like, okay, this is enough. And then I can automatically tell the difference in my body. And I can tell the difference when I don't take them as well too, which that's also an interesting thing, that when I'm not paying attention or staying on top of my vitamins, because that happens, because we're all not perfect. And so it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, there might be a day or two that I might miss, but then I will notice right away too when that day or two happens. And so I have to, make sure I put like reminders in my phone and things like that, to make sure that I'm staying on top of it.
So, okay. So I went to the doctor today, right? For some odd reason, they don't know. They haven't got the test back yet, but my blood pressure was high. And they took it 3 times. She was like, take a deep breath, take a deep breath, take a deep breath. And it kept going up, up, and up. And I'm just like, well, Tom, I'm texting you. You're not responding. And I'm like, she was like, what are you eating? And I'm like, I barely, you know what I mean? I barely eat for, I said, but I have been having more fast food than I normally do or whatever. And then she was like, no, it's something that's going on. I said, well, I am stressed because I got these events coming up. And she was like, no, that's not it. or whatever. And she was just like really on me, and it just kept going up. And I was just like, she was scaring me.
I was gonna say she was stressing you out.
Yeah,
Actually,
she was stressing me out.
if she would have actually left the room and let you like have a few moments to breathe, because I don't think that they realize that when you're constantly going to doctors like that, that causes a panic within itself, because you're like, I don't know what you're gonna come up with next. And that's a real life, thing where it's like, I don't know what you're gonna come to me with this time.
Yeah, and I was just like, and I see it going up. So I'm looking, I'm just like, okay, this hypertension, like what's like what? And I'm looking at her, and she's like on me, like she's mothering me, and I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, try that 557 that I was just telling you about.
So I was saying that to say, like, even though nothing has came back yet, like, what would you suggest, like, as far as natural things?
Well, just like I was just mentioning, like doing the breath work. Also too, looking at like beet juice is something that also helps when it comes to blood pressure. I'm going to probably do a video about it because I haven't tried it yet, but I actually found a juice. It's like beet, ginger, and I think lemon.
Okay.
And it's supposed to basically, like, I guess the lemon and ginger is supposed to kill the beet, because I'm not a fan of beets either. But I've had juice that has had beets mixed in it where you can't taste it. And I'm like, that's what I like. I'm like, I need it to be like this. So I'm going to go ahead and try this juice and see, because I did, the last time I went to my doctor, my cholesterol is actually borderline.
Okay.
And so he was like, I want you to go ahead and, look at, trying this. That's because at first they were trying to put me on the pill. And I said, now, you're funny.
No.
You're a funny guy. I'm not about to take this pill. I said, so what other, options do I have? And I said, you know what? Don't even worry about it. And I pulled out my phone and I said, okay, I could do plant sterols. I could do this. I could do that. He's like, okay. He's like, well, what are you going to do? So I'm going to do the plant sterols, and I'm going to see how that goes until the next time I see you. And that's pretty much what I've been doing, is just that, and just kind of like watching, like, like you said, but also too, depending upon your age, like when you hit like mid 30s and up, that little peri person tries to come through as well. And that also messes with your hormones. And so that's also something to also consider too, because the pause is real. And that's another, thing to also consider as well. So it's just those are a few things, but definitely look at your stress and see how you can carve out more time for yourself.
Yeah, because I'm like, I was just thinking, I was like, I got some events going on. I was like, I'm about to get ready to go out of town. She's like, no, that's not it. I'm like, well, I was like,
okay, like, well, systemically speaking, there's racism. You guys can't find out what's wrong with me. You keep giving me a pill for things. What else do you want me to say is going on, ma'am?
She was not trying to put me on a pill. Like, and I was looking at her like, you freaking me out. Like, what? I'm looking at her like, I was like, you're freaking me out. She was like, we need to figure out what's going on. And, I was there for a pap smear because, individuals with lupus has to get pap smears done because you can have abnormal pap. So that's what I was there. Yeah, so that's what I was there for. And here she go with the blood pressure. She was like, it's going up. It's going up. I was just like,
but the thing, and actually going back to what you're saying with the pap, the other thing though to be concerned about when they say the abnormal, I don't think people realize that when they do the paps, a lot of times they're plucking from the same spot and they're not allowing the body to heal from that initial one. And so that's the other thing to also consider, that there's a possibility that you could get an abnormal and the next one will be regular because they might have pinched it from a different spot. But if your doctor has a tendency to go for this same, keeps going to the same spot, that's another thing to also be mindful of. And they really don't tell you about
No, they
that.
don't tell you. And you got to educate. Like, I had my doctor like forever. You know what I'm saying? I had my doctor like forever. And you have to educate yourself. Like when I was, I put it on the book, like what I was going for. And somebody from Michigan was just like, my doctor said, no, that's not true. And I'm like, you have to educate yourself. You have to, doctors are just as good as you. And sometimes what make doctors good, they practice outside of their practice, become specialists. So you got to know what you're going for. You got to know what they're doing and all that other stuff. You got to talk to them. You got to tell them too. Like, you got to tell them too. And if you're not an advocate for yourself, then they're just going to do what they want to do.
No, absolutely. Like I have Google alerts set up for me that tells me about it. Like I have one set up for chronic pain. I have one that's set up for chronic pain in people of color. and I have one for speaking events. and I get emails every day that tells me here's the top things that are going on with chronic pain research, different things that are happening. I might say something about lupus, I might say something about fibro, I might say something about back pain, like whatever it is. I get those on a daily basis because I want to know what's going on in my, in my area. So that way I can say something. And two, it is, kind of comical sometimes because there's not like my primary care physician, amazing. The other ones, and he apologized to me because he was like, I'm sorry that I sent you to the, he was like, I'm sorry that I sent you. He's like, I thought that they could help you. Yeah, because he referred me out. He was like, I thought that they'd be able to help you, but then, so that's my guy. Like he's cool. And so he'll, say like, hey, this is what's going on. This is what you might want to look at. And like, I'll talk with him and say, hey, this is, just a heads up. Like, I don't know if you saw this yet. And like, so we'll like trade off, information with each other. Well, I'll say, hey, I just saw this study. Did you know that this just came out? He's like, no, I didn't know it came out. Can you forward it? Like, so I like forward it to him.
That's dope.
And so being able to go ahead and do that. But it, he said it's unfortunate it had to happen this way because of what happened, because he told me, he was like, because of your particular, your case, for your case, he said, your case really opened up my eyes to how, how the system is.
And that's crazy, just to hear that, like, I can visualize that in some sense because of what I went through, and to see you like just moving, grooving, walking, and
I seen him at the gym one time because he was looking. He said, "Hold on, you want a stair climber?"
Like, yeah, I am.
Yes.
And I just feel like doctors should be more mindful. Like they should have some more classes, and I know they got on learning and things like that, but they need other things like culture learning and more on the eyes and physical things, because you should not be able to look at a patient and be like, oh no, nothing's wrong with you.
But then that's also another thing too, that oftentimes, like when it comes to the actual students that are learning, they're not learning on melanated people. They are learning on non-melanated people. And that's where a lot of the systems and things that are set up. So for example, there's actually, and I'll forward it to you, it was a TED Talk that actually just came out on this past Saturday. And it's a Southeast Asian lady. And she was, talking about, because she's, like I said, medical student. And she's talking about how, people are not being taken, that melanated people are not taking, are not being properly cared for, because of the fact that people can't recognize the different skin things. Because they'll say for a person like, oh, well, it's going to come up as a bruise and this and this. Well, if it's a person of color, the bruise is not going to come up. Or a prime example, Mongolian spots. And she was talking about how a lady almost got her child taken because she came in with the baby and was saying, hey, I'm concerned about, about what's going on. Not because she didn't know it's her first child. So she didn't know that Mongolian spots were. So she brought the baby and said, hey, I don't know what's going on. I'm noticing this. They call CPS on her.
Oh, are you serious?
And they were about to take it, and then it happened to be that they're like, well, wait a minute. Like, have you actually, because they were saying the baby was bruised all over. Well, no, the baby wasn't bruised all over. It's the Mongolian spots.
People with lupus get bruises all the time, out of nowhere.
But
fibromyalgia, people with lupus have fibromyalgia as well. And can't be that ignorant. Are you serious?
But they don't pay attention. That's the thing. It's unfortunate that they don't look at that. And even like for the aspect of pain, there was actually, I believe it was in 2016, it's about approximately 60% of medical students that were first and second year residents thought that people of color had thicker skin and therefore could withstand more pain.
That don't even make any sense. Pain comes from the nerves. What sensors in the brain that talks to each other? What the skin has anything to do with anything?
That's how
the systems even in medical school.
That's how the systems are set up. So that's what you're looking at. For
you kidding me? They in medical school. They did not think that. That's dermatology.
2016 survey.
Are you serious? Dermatology.
No, it was. I don't know if it was
the skin. I'm just saying that's the skin. That's dermal.
That we had a higher pain, but that also goes back to the experimentation on us, though, too.
That makes no
sense. Also from them, doing the experiments. The lovely the doctor of gynecology, doing all those experiments on women of color without anesthesia. And, all those different things. And so it's like when you start to get deeper into how the systems and things are set up, it does make you be very leery on when you're going. And of course, I'm not anti-doctor. So before anybody comes through here and says that, I'm not, it's just that I'm anti-uninformed doctors. I want you to be informed. I want you to actually build a relationship with your patients. I want you to spend more than, 5 to 10 minutes. Like my primary care physician, even though he should not be, he definitely spends at least a good half an hour to 45 minutes with you and gets to know you. He prays with you like the whole entire 9. But then also too, he ends up being behind because he's making sure that he's taking that time with his patients to get to know them and find out what they truly need.
And I'm glad you said it. My doctor is always behind, but I show her grace because she takes out that we be talking, joking,
Absolutely.
talking about my outside stuff that don't even matter.
Yeah.
She just has that. She builds that accord, and then she asks me everything that I need and all the other the things. But that is sad because where I work at or whatever, and when I was a floor nurse, they do have you on a time frame, and that time frame does not allow you to do what it is that you need to do for them.
Correct.
It just does not allow you to do that. The people that's under you get penalized for that. It makes no sense. So the way the system is set up is not to care for the patients.
It's not conducive. It's only trauma based, and that's the thing. It's only just to basically get you out the door. Yes. Let's go ahead and patch you up, and let's get you to where you need to be going to.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's like, now we have to go ahead and basically we have to take care of ourselves. And unfortunately, it's not something that we're necessarily taught in school. It's something that, you might see from family. Like for me, like I mentioned, my family was originally from the West Indies. And so therefore, I have different things that I was taught to do when I get sick versus like others, where it used to be very interesting with myself and my ex-husband. We'd be like, okay, like, well, I need you to do this and this with the kids. You're like, what is that? What are you rubbing on them? Like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? I'm like, they're going to be all right, though. They're going to be okay.
Yeah.
We're going to knock this out. Whatever this cold and thing is going on. But it's just being able to now go back to what you originally, were taught. And it's sometimes for a lot of us, it's just being able to kind of tap back into yourself again and being like, okay, like I remember my grandma doing this, or I remember this, like, what is this? And you might sit back and be like, oh, I do remember seeing her do this or do that. And then you start asking around and you find out, oh, there is a particular thing that you could be doing from your family. And now
for sure, it's a lot of my words that I tell them, like remedies that they do at home and stuff that I used to do to my kids instead of just going to the doctor all the time. It's a lot of things that you can do at home to heal your children.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
And then my other thing too is that I also, believe in plant-based medicine. And so I'm a big proponent for like CBD, because we're in Wisconsin. So being able to go ahead and say, CBD was a big piece that like helped me when I was getting off of the medications and things as well too. Because I still was having like the last thing that I couldn't get off of, which I should say I thought I couldn't get off of, was my migraine medication. And it was just because whenever my migraine would come on, I'd have to take this pill. And unfortunately, it would bring the migraine all the way through, but then it would like stop it. And then I would kind of be okay for a couple of days. And then I would have like another like mini headaches that would come after that. And so I was starting to have a migraine, starting to come. And I was sitting with my kids and we were watching a movie. And I said to my son, I said, I got to go lay down. And he looked at me, he said, oh, you about to get a headache, aren't you? Because like, you start, your kids, they start to pay attention to you and everything with what's going on. I said, yeah, I am. I said, I'm just going to go upstairs and take some. I'm going to go lay down. He's like, all right, well, I'll see you in a couple of days because, they know how it is. And so I said, I had the, the CBD oil right here and I had the box right here. And I looked, I said, okay, I'm going to try this first. If this doesn't work, I still got this, that I always take anyway. So I took the first, dose of the CBD and I went and lay down. And I told my son, I said, hey, I'm about to, I took something, I'm about to go lay down. So he didn't know what I took. I just said I took something, about to lay down.
Right.
So I laid down. I want to say maybe 10 to 15 minutes later, I sat up and I was like, wait a minute, where did my headache go? Like, this is not okay. So then I got up and I came out the room and my son, like, he kind of like popped up. He's like, Mom, you okay? What's going on? I need to call somebody. Like, what? And I was like, I'm like, no. I said, I feel good. I said, I'm gonna come down and finish watching movies with y'all. He was like, you sure? I said, yeah. So I came down there, I sat down and watched the movies with him and everything. He kind of, looking at me, just peeking, every now and again to make sure that I'm okay. And then I'm like, okay, you guys are done now. We were done with the movies and everything. I was like, okay, I'm going to go to bed. He was like, okay, so I'm going to look at you, he's I'm going to check on you during the night. Make sure
that's
you're okay.
So sweet.
And I took like another dose of it before I laid back down. But I lay down and I think I heard him like probably like, pop in my room just to kind of like look at me and see. But I got up the next day and I was fine. And I was like, okay,
So
this
you
does
found
not
something
happen.
that works.
And that, worked for me. And then I realized like, oh, it actually started to help for like my nerve pain that I had as well too, because I was on the highest dose of gabapentin that you could take. I was taking three pills 3 times a day. So that's the max.
Oh, yeah, it is.
So I was taking 3,600 milligrams a day.
And they wasn't working?
No. On top of Lyrica as well too. And I was taking all of them. So when I say like I was taking 15, 15 medications, 30 pills a day, that was part of that cocktail of things that I was taking.
I'm so happy you just like got rid of that and you own what you own right now.
Mm-hmm. It's such a huge difference. The thing though too is like, my body still like it's still detoxing, from it. Like there's still be times where I'm just like, okay, I notice different things, but it's like I'm glad that my body has had that opportunity to kind of flush those things out. And it's like as I'm learning more and more about different things to do, I just, pay attention to it. And sometimes too, I don't even realize like I might be doing something that, well, I should say like this, my body knows, my brain might not be, aware of it. So I just might go with it and then I'll be like, well, wait a minute. Like I inherently just did that. Like I know it's like lately I've been hearing about like papaya cleanses and things like that. And people eating like papaya seeds to like help cleanse and parasites and different things like that. And I'm like, I see papayas all the time growing up in the seeds and stuff. And it's like, that was just something that was intrinsically in me because that's what my family did. And that's how we did our with watermelons, swallowing the seeds and things like that. So now when people are talking about, I'm like, okay. I like people are starting to kind of get because of the
going back to
gift,
their roots.
right? But also the gift and the curse of the internet. People are kind of starting to learn, but also too you're able to go ahead and share those different things. Like I'm in a herbal group on on Facebook, and last night I was watching because a lady had posted about doing herbal baths in say I think it was might have been in Trinidad. And I've like responded because there's another girl that was on there saying, oh, I'm West Indian, and we do this. And I said, yeah, I said, and I also did this too. And I said, yeah, like my granny would have like this bottle in the fridge that had all the stuff, just everything. And you rub it on the kids and like, talking about stretching their bodies and massaging them and everything. And it's things that, sometimes you don't realize that you're kind of doing it like culturally, but then seeing that, oh, here are the actual, kind of like the quote unquote, science behind it. Like, for example, the stretching and like rubbing coconut oil and helping to kind of stretch the body out in the joints and everything. And I did it with all 3 of my kids, and 2 out of 3 are taller than me. And I said, maybe it's from me stretching. And then I kind of jokingly, my kids are like, well, I guess your mom didn't stretch you enough or whatever, because I'm shorter than them. So I'm just like, I'm 5'6", y'all. I'm not like a little person, just like, but compared to them.
That is funny. That is funny. So you think that worked?
I think it does. I think it did.
What do
it
you
did for me. Look.
Okay, so I have a question. What do you think about what do you think about? I think it's called hemp almond soap.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that? Because you could use that almost on anything. And in my head, I'm like, if you could use that as soap, but then if you can dilute it and use it as laundry detergent and all-purpose cleaner and all of these things, like, is it really safe to use it as soap?
Well, think about it. You can use lemon and stuff as far as for cleaning as well, too. So, I mean, there's different things that when you put the combination together, it actually is like it can clean different things. So it's like when you're thinking about it that way and looking at it as a natural aspect. Yeah. I mean, you also got to definitely read.
Yeah, just say dilute it with water. That's what all
I mean, the ingredients as far as like what is actually in
everything that you can pronounce.
There you go. That's because that's the other thing too. I'm a firm believer of that. Yes, I can pronounce quinoa, but still, being able to go ahead and look at it, if you can read whatever it is on the thing.
Yeah, I was looking at that. I'm like, how is it safe to use as soap, but you can also use it as laundry detergent and all-purpose cleaner?
But yeah, I mean, because if you're cleaning your clothes, you're cleaning your body. It just says less chemicals.
I guess. Yeah. Okay. Well, I had to ask because I'm like, I see it.
And it's a good question to ask. I say there's no such thing as a bad question. Because if you don't know, and the thing too is like you can be asking a question for somebody else that might not be able to ask the question because they're like, I don't want nobody, to feel a way about me, which that's another thing.
I don't give a crap. Listen, I'm gonna ask.
Exactly.
I'm gonna ask because I want to know. Like, I'm like, I can use this for everything.
Right.
And all it says is you adding different amounts of water for each thing that you use.
Mhm.
I don't know. Did you seek out any doctors or any community that support your move towards holistic treatments, and how did they influence your decisions?
I definitely went like the alternative route. So like I tried acupuncture, I tried chiropractors, let's see what else. Massage therapy. Massage therapy is like my top thing that stays in my life. That's something that cannot go away. That is a a thing for me. Yoga. I definitely want to try Pilates for real. Like I've done like the in the house type situation, but I want to definitely, go ahead and go that route. Also, I'm trying to think what other things I've done too. Like saunas, like the cold therapy. Not so much the cold therapy because I'm still kind of leery with it.
Like the cold therapy, like how you who just
I've
did
done
that?
like the cold showers. I have not done like the cold plunge type
Okay,
situation
because I was like,
that one's a little tricky because I know I've heard where it says like when you're having like chronic pain and things like that it could help. And I'm just like, in my mind, my thing is that like when it gets cold around here and we go outside and my body goes into shock and I can't take it, I said, I don't think that that's the same thing for me to actually jump into some water. But I mean, I'm not opposed to it. It might be something I might do down the line. It might have to be like 100 degrees outside and then I jump in there and I might kind of offset it. I'm gonna have a lot of stipulations set up with this. It ain't just gonna be like I'm gonna be like, okay, we gotta have this whole list of things done first. And if it's set up this way, I'm gonna go ahead and do it.
Child, I could never. I seen Toya do it, and she was just like, I don't know. It looked painful. It looked painful.
I think it's just one of those things, but also too, I feel like with breath work, you probably could definitely get
because my fingers like burn when it's cold here.
Me too.
So I would know. I probably
and that's nerve, and that's the thing, and that's nerve when you're feeling that's a nerve
like they be burning. So I couldn't imagine that.
Yeah,
they would have to guarantee me like.
But that's what I'm saying. I have a whole bunch of stipulations. I already told you, so I got a whole list set up. I'm like, we'll have to make this work. I'm like, if not, I can't do it.
Oh my God. So how can people find you? So like for your holistic thing, right? Are you in a clinic? Do you have a private study? Like people like me, like how are you accessible?
Very good question. So you can reach out to me. My website is IamChronicallyResilient.com.
Tom, can you please put that in the chat?
So IamChronicallyResilient.com. You can also reach me on Instagram, which is I Am Chronically Resilient. And then also on Facebook is just my name, Serita Valmond. So those are definitely 3 ways. Also to social media wise. I'm also on LinkedIn under my name. Let me think what else. And also I'm gonna throw my number out here because I ain't too proud. 262-207-4067. That's 262-207-4067. That is my business line. So that does only work during business hours. So I'm just like Big Red. My business hours are from, and they are listed on my site as well. So I will definitely respond to you the next, business day as well too. Or like I said, business day, if it's on the weekend, you got to give me some grace now. And those would be the ways. I'm currently getting ready to launch my course. So I'm working on that. I also am doing workshops as well too. So if you are like in a position where like, hey, we need a workshop for what you're doing, which I customize my workshops as well. So you can always reach out to me and say, hey, Serita, we need self-care for people that are living with lupus or that have chronic conditions. What would that look like for us? Or how can we start our healing journey? Because we know that our healing journey is different because it's not like this because of this. And so it's
get out of my head. I was just about to ask you that.
So it's all those, different things like that I can definitely, customize. We discuss budget. If you're a person where like, hey, my employer could really, I noticed there's a lot of us that actually have it, in our job or something. You're like, let me talk to my HR and say, hey, I know someone that could actually come in and could do, a workshop for us. Maybe this could help us. And I used to work in HR back in the day too. So I kind of have that familiar aspect of it to be like, hey, you could even, here's a tip. You go in right and you say, hey, do y'all, I'm concerned about how much I'm paying for my health insurance. Have y'all ever paid attention? What are like maybe the top concerns that you're noticing in the population of the employees? Because those are things that could actually, number one, help lower lower how much you're paying for your insurance from your employer. But then also too, that's helping to educate the staff as well. So it's being able to go ahead, and it's kind of like a trade-off, when you look at it that way too, because the thing is like you have to pour into your workforce.
Yeah, you do.
If you don't take care, prime example, there was a survey that was done actually pre-pandemic that in the United States alone, $300 billion is lost a year due to people not able to work because of them living with chronic pain. So that's them calling into work, saying that they can't work, and that's the money that's being lost. So this is what you're losing because your employees cannot work from your business. So if you're taking some of that 300 billion to put back into your, your staff, you might be in a better position.
And that's where you come in at.
Absolutely.
Oh my God.
Oh, also public speaking as well too. So if you've heard the voice for quite some time, that's the other thing. So I do, come in and, we can discuss, what you would need for me to speak on as well too. I've done, keynote speeches and things as well. So I'm open. My goal is I want to make sure that we're able to heal, and, healing in community is truly best. When you get a person, pushed to their, by themselves, that's when, like my granny used to say, the idle mind is a devil's playground. And that's when those times and those things start to, come up in the mind where, you might start thinking, like I said, I had a moment where that was, I thought that I was not going to be here. And that's why I had to also, make sure for myself that I keep a reminder. And I have a tattoo on me that says my story isn't over.
That is beautiful.
And I keep this on me so I can look at it when I have those moments where I'm like, okay, what is going on? What is happening? I'm like, well, wait a minute. You getting a little idle over here. What happens when you're idle? I feel like my granny be tapping my shoulder like, I need you to go ahead and do something. Like, okay, I need to go ahead and, quote unquote, move around or, go ahead and look at what, look to what I am supposed to be doing. And of course, there are going to be things that at the moment might be a hindrance. But that also is something that now you have to work through and overcome, because that's that part of your journey that then is going to be able to catapult you to the next level.
Absolutely. And what do you say for people that try to challenge the holistic side versus the medication side?
I just say, let's look at the side effects. That's all I want to look at. It's like, let's look at the data, because I feel like now a lot of times it's a science-based thing, or just like, so now that there is more research that's coming out on the holistic side of things, I can be like, okay, you want that? I got this. Like, we want to play spades? What we doing? You got a book? Like, what's going on? Like, what, because we can go ahead and we can do that. We can discuss that. I mean, even like looking at, like I mentioned CBD, but also THC as well. You're looking at all those different things. I mean, Willie Nelson just turned 92. What did Willie Nelson do?
All day long.
So, I mean,
and like as far as the numbers too, like just me knowing with anything like as far, when it comes to employment or the research and things like that, people pick and choose what goes into the data. Like everything, they test it and all that stuff, but people do have to understand, like, people pick and choose what they put into the data for the data to look good. So even then everything is questionable. So it's just what it is that you want to go with. Like medication work, holistic thing work, different things work. So it's just what direction that you want to go in.
And the thing also too is that it is your
preference,
right? And it's also your, your choice. And your thing is like, being able to kind of put it back into your hands. Because I feel like a lot of times, a lot of it's been taught as a dictatorship. Where it's like the doctor is telling you what to do and you have to do it like this or else. And it's like, well, no, this is supposed to be a partnership. This is my body. You ain't never spent a day in my body. How you gonna tell me, how I'm feeling or what's going on with me when I'm saying to you, like, this is not normal for me. Like, this might sound normal for XYZ and Susie Q, but for me, that's not what this is. So I need you to kind of figure out what this could possibly be. And by the way, I need this tested, this tested, this test, and this test. I know that this is covered under my insurance. You have to just go ahead and put this in. So that shouldn't be an issue.
And that's where it comes for people to do their own homework and not just go somewhere and expect for them to know exactly what's going on with you and your insurance. So it takes work on their end as well if they're trying to get better too.
Absolutely. You have to go ahead and do the things for yourself too, because unfortunately they're not going to do it for you. You have to be your own champion. You have to be your own advocate. You have to go ahead and say these things. And if it's a situation where you're at a point where you're not feeling strong enough for that, that's when you reach out to us and say, hey, you know what? I've been doing this for too long by myself. I need assistance with this. That's not you saying that you're weak at all. It's like, now we got the village together. We're now going to go ahead and get whatever it is that we need to get. Who can talk on your behalf? Do you have someone that you could designate as a POA? Like all, POA or things like that, like all these different things. Let's look at who could be your medical surrogate. There's so many different things that you could look at to make sure that you're taken care of. But it's like, we also need to know these things. And that's not information that's readily available either.
Yeah, you got to be honest with yourself. You got to know your triggers. And unfortunately, like when it comes to the Black and brown community, people think it's all in the mind. But when it comes to the other community, people just go ahead and fix and patch and give them whatever it is that they need. So it's just unfortunate. We got the power. We just got to come together as one, because we make more noise together versus separation. And once we learn that, then we'll be better off as one than separated. So,
no, absolutely.
With that being said, I do thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure having you. We had so much more to talk about. We don't want to forget May 3rd. Please do register at www.lupushasnoface.com for this free, amazing, the 5th Lupus Has No Face annual informational. Serita herself will be in the building. She also will have her vending table in the building with her amazing
banging body butter.
There you go.
So just make sure you stop by, because I have a limited supply right now, because there is a certain person that has these things called tariffs going on right now that is making it a little difficult for some of us people that like to make our products for our clients. So we're trying to find workarounds. So you want to get my limited supply, so don't feel away if you don't see a size. I need you to just come on through.
Come on through.
And you see the glow. You see I have it on me right now. And as I often say, don't get caught ashy. So please come on through and make sure, because this is all stuff that is good for your system. Everything is organic. It's stuff that, unless you are allergic to plant-based items, you should be fine. So
yes, come get it. Come hear her. She's going to be one of the dope speakers as well. There's going to be some other amazing people in the building. They all have licenses, education behind their name. So you're definitely going to get a mouthful. Come network. If you know somebody with lupus, fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, any visible illness, it is free. Come get informed. May 3rd from 2 to 4. You would not be disappointed. Until next time, see you soon.